Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome to Infographics with Google Forms, Sheets, and Drawings. My name is Mary Kovach from Erie One Bosse's Winnerick, and my contact info is on here. Also, you'll find ways to contact me and this presentation itself actually within the online course platform. And we'll talk a little later about where you can find the other materials. And if you are here for the live session, at the very top of the slide here, it says ask a question at goo.gl/slides/UNE9x3. So again, if you needed to ask a question after the fact, I will point you in the direction of those resources later. Okay, so first we'll talk about what is an infographic. It's probably one of those things that you have seen them before. You've probably seen many examples, but you didn't really know what the word for that was, perhaps. So infographics are a visual representation of data, not just used in education, actually used a lot in news media as well. So this is from Kathy Schrock, whose link I have here. When students create infographics, they're using information literacy, visual literacy, and technology literacies together. And to kind of explain what an infographic is with an infographic, I have one example here on the side with Legos. I kind of like this one. So here you have your data, which is just a bunch of unorganized Legos. That's usually how the Legos look at our house, just all in big piles and boxes. And then the data is sorted. This is how the Legos look at my son's best friend's house. That's not our house. So first, then you sort the data. You arrange it in a way that makes sense and present it in a visually appealing manner that also conveys information. And I'll just show you some examples. So if you click on the first link, which is Kathy Schrock, she actually is a great resource, great librarian, great resource for a number of different educational technology topics. And she has her own video resources here, as well as some links to some infographic examples. So you can see she has my infographics as explained by Legos, link here. Okay. And so some other samples, USA Today snapshots. So some of these are a little bit older, but just so you can kind of see the idea, you'll have some very simple graphics. Maybe you could have a picture in the background or just a solid color background with some stats to go along with this. So this is showing how few of America's roots are English, Irish, German, which maybe are more of the traditional ones. Excuses to get out of traffic tickets, some interesting ones. So using some simple shapes and graphics with some data and maybe some images as well. Okay, and so visitors from other countries to the US. So there are any number of infographics you can look at there. Some other ones here, school libraries and student achievement. I have something somewhat similar on my desk at work. So you see some of these, you might have some simple drawings, some stats. Some have more text than others, and maybe you would want to actually cite those sources as well, of course. Being librarians, this is what we do. Okay, so she has a number of examples there. Even something as simple as think about myplate.gov. Okay, so now this is, as you know, My Plate is the new food pyramid. So think of the food pyramid. What is My Plate? So something as simple as this, where you have pieces of a pie or pieces of a plate, as how much of each of those you should be eating with a meal, and then have your dairy on the side. So some examples that are out there for infographics. And in fact, this one here is an infographic about infographics. Okay, so why infographics? They accelerate decision making. You have an idea to share. Traditionally, it can be written, people interpret that. Whereas here, it's also illustrated. People can gather that information sometimes more quickly, have that aha moment. And then some different outcomes here. So again, these are some great examples of some infographics. And I just created a couple of examples that I'll kind of work through today and show you from the end back. Okay, so my first example is, with the end in mind, physical activity for boys and girls. Now, again, this is just some sample data that I put together, not actual data that I collected, but this will show you the process that we'll be looking at in the webinar. Okay, so you see in this one, what I have is simple background and shapes for boys and for girls with some arrows, and these are done in Google Drawings. But the data that's pulled from here, if I click on one of these pie charts, you'll see a link. This is actually linked to Google Sheets. So it's linked to a spreadsheet that I put this chart into based on the data that was there. Okay, so now I'm going to click on the drop down and choose open source. Okay. And so here I have my sample data. And then notice that if I change something in here, it's going to change that chart. Okay. Now here, once I go back to my drawing, if I click update, it's going to update here as well. So really right now, this is a dynamic living, breathing chart within my Google Drawings. At some point, maybe you'd want to print that out and make it static. But again, as students are collecting data, this is something that can be dynamic and changing. Okay, and you can see on this one, I actually put the legend on that has the percentages right inside here. So again, these are linked out to Google Sheets data. Okay, so how do students collect the data? Well, they could certainly just ask their friends, and then they could type the data into a new Google Sheet. So again, to start a new Google Sheets, from your Google Drive, you would do new and choose Google Sheets. That's how you could start one from scratch. Another way that we're going to talk about today is taking some form survey data. So having students create some forms, which then the data goes out to Google Sheets. And from there, you can get those charts that you bring into your drawings. Okay, so I'm going to click on my second example here. And again, this is just sample that I put together. I filled out the survey as kind of mock people on my own. But this one is looking at education and income for men and women. So let's say that they were doing writing piece on the wage gap or a presentation on the wage gap. Here's sort of some data that is coming in based on that. So looking at your level of education, and then based on that, what is your annual income? So again, I have the same thing where if I click on the drop down, I'm going to click open source, and it's going to open up that data. And so then again, if the data changes here, it's also going to change in these charts. But the way that data is coming in is through form responses. Okay, so this is actually data that I've filtered from all the results I got in a Google form. Okay, so again, we're looking from the end product and working backwards here. If I go up to the form menu, I'm going to click on either go to live form or edit form. So the live form, this is what it would look like for those who are taking the survey. So again, they would fill out their gender, education level, job field, and income, and click submit. But again, if you wanted to edit that form, I'm going to go to form and click edit form. And then in here, you can see this is where I entered the questions. So we're going to start then by talking about how you can use Google Forms, which are really a great way of collecting data, and different ways that you can have that data displayed, starting with your Google Forms. Okay, so I'm just going to close out of these. Okay. Let me just check and see if we have any questions so far. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, Google Forms are a great way of gathering data. There's also some additional ways. So again, if you're not collecting survey data that you are giving to other people through a poll, you can also do some research right from Google Docs through a tool called Explore. Okay, so just want to do a little side note about that. If I click on this link, it's just going to kind of explain to you how the Explore tool works within Google Doc. So I'll just kind of show you a quick example here. This link is from Matt Miller. Mr. Ditch the Textbook has some great resources for educational technology. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up one of my Word docs here. Okay. Click on one of these. Okay. So again, this came from Gale Databases from the Buffalo News, but I mean, I can still use the Explore tools. So the way to access those tools is either in the lower right corner, click Explore, or click on Tools from your top menu and click Explore. It's going to look slightly different if you're in Google Sheets or Google Slides, but you see what it does is it gives me some suggested images and topics based on the article itself. So if I wanted to, for example, insert this image, I could click on the plus, and then, oh, there we go. It has all of my towns in Erie County. Okay, or again, I could click on one of these topics, and it's going to give me some web results that I could click on for research. And also, if I click, when I kind of mouse over it, if I click on this little quotation mark, I can also then cite this as a footnote. Okay, and so again, any of the images, it also brings in the link to your image. You can find images. You can search for things in your drive. So just the way, if students have already started a document with kind of their writing, their rationale, another place they can go to maybe get some other information. So again, this is something that I took from a database, but to kind of do some research further, looking through website resources using Google Explore. Okay, so now into the presentation, which starts with using Google Forms for authentic research. And the idea of authentic research is students are actually the ones creating the surveys or polls and the ones collecting and analyzing that data that comes in from the form. Okay, so now in this presentation, I actually have a link. It's a tip sheet on how to use Google Forms. In case you need to come back to it, it goes over sort of the basics of how forms are laid out. Okay. Okay, so the way that you would create a form is you could go to the link that I have here. Normally when I'm creating a form, the way that I do that is I go right to my drive. So some options that you have for Google Forms, you want to create questions. They work well if there are multiple choice, multiple select sometimes, but something that can be easily displayed in a readable chart. So that's why if it is a multiple choice or a drop-down type question, that usually works pretty well. Or let's say a scale. You can do a linear scale of, let's say, 1 to 5. And I'll show you some of those options. Then that's also one that you could use for creating the infographics. Okay. And if you want to make sure people answer certain questions, we're going to make sure that we mark those questions as required. And then also I'll talk about some ways that then you can share that survey, either within your organization or outside of it. And of course, then we'll talk about how you can get those responses to display within a Google Sheet. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Google Drive. I'm going to click New. And if I wanted to start a new form, what I would have to do is scroll down past Docs, Sheets, and Slides to where it says More. And then under here, I have my option for Google Forms. Okay, so I'll click here. Okay. So now I start with just this sort of default purple page. And I'm just going to type in first the title of my poll. So let's call this Families Background. So let's say that I'm doing a survey of where my friends, fellow classmates, family members came from. Okay, so I'm going to type that here. And then if I click where it says Untitled Form in the upper left, it's going to fill in that same title. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to click on the first question. It says Untitled Question. And again, you can have multiple choice if you go to this drop down. I would say that's a great option to choose when you're using this to create infographics. There's also check boxes, which would be if you wanted to check off more than one possible option. You could do that as well. You could do a linear scale, which would be on a scale of 1 to 5, what it is. 1 being terrible, 5 being great, or vice versa. You would set what those are. In this case, I'm going to put multiple choice. Okay. So the first question I'll ask is, what is the biggest, I can say, ethnic group in your family's background? Okay. So again, because of what I typed, it's suggested paragraph, but I could certainly change that to multiple choice if I wanted to. A drop down would do the same thing, where you would have to choose one. Okay. Okay, so let's say I'll choose here Eastern European, Western European, Asian, Pacific, Caribbean. Let's see. Put in. Let's see. North American. Put in Central or South American. Put in African, and I could put in other options as well, or I can choose to add other. And if I choose that, somebody can type in, they have the option to type in their own question. Okay. So now from here, if I want this to be a required question, at the bottom of the question, I'm just going to drag the slider to the right so that in order to submit, they actually have to make sure they finish that question. Okay, if I wanted to delete the question, I can click delete. If I wanted to duplicate, I can click that here. So in this case, I might actually want to do that. In some cases, we won't get into this here, but you might want to have multiple sections where based on an answer they give, they're brought out to one section or another. Okay, so now here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate that question. And I'm just going to call that, what is another ethnic group in your family's background? Okay, so there is other. But I'm also going to add, in case someone's all one thing or another, click none. Okay, and then I'll add a third one as well. I know some people are 4, 5, 6, could be any number of different areas of the world that they are from. But I'm just going to duplicate this question. So now I have 2 of that same with the none in there. And so now I'm also going to add in, let's say, another question. So I'm not going to do a multiple choice this time. I'm going to click on the plus to add a question. And this one, I will choose that linear scale. So I can ask, how much do you think your family's background affects your daily life or ideas, let's say. Okay, so now it will be on a scale of 1 to 5. Let's say the first one I can label as not at all. And the last one I'll say very much. So a 5 would be if it affects them greatly. And a 1 if it doesn't really affect them at all. Okay, and again, I'll make this a required question. These should all be required because they were copied from the other ones. Okay. So at the top here, I can put a form description if I want to. Please complete this survey to the best of your knowledge and ability. I appreciate your help with my research, let's say. Okay, so now if you want to see what your survey looks like so far, you can click on the eyeball at the top of the page to preview. Okay, so you can see that here I can select one and type in other. Same with these. And same thing here, select my option on the scale here. Okay. And then users would click submit. And by default, it's set up so that if they want to, they can submit another response. But I'll show you how you can customize some of those options as well. Okay. So now at the top of the page, if I click on the gear, It's going to bring me to my settings. So if you're working in your school domain, one thing that you may want to pay attention to is by default, usually it will restrict the form to just users within your domain. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that. If I wanted to have this available, let's say, to parents at home without logging in, and if I wanted to limit it to one response, you would actually have to have them sign in. You could also collect email addresses if it's something where you wanted to be able to contact people after the fact. Okay, and you can choose whether you want them to be able to edit after they submit. In this case, maybe I don't see why they couldn't. Perhaps if it was a quiz, you might not want them to. Also, you can choose if you want them to be able to see a summary of the text responses that have been collected so far. So maybe people are interested to see so far what others have responded with. So again, that would be up to you. Presentation, if you wanted to shuffle the question order or show a link to submit another response, you could do that as well. The confirmation message by default is your response has been recorded. I could put in thank you. I could copy and paste in a link that they could go to as well. There is a quizzes feature. If you are using this as a teacher to send out quizzes to students, we won't get into that here. That's a topic for another day. But you do have that option within Google Forms as well. Okay, so I'll click Save. Okay. So now, if you wanted to see your survey results, again, I filled it out once. So now, if I click on the second tab next to questions, I have responses. Obviously, so far, it's only been the one, but you can sort of see how it creates that pie chart. So to share the survey, you would want to get the link that I clicked on for the eyeball here. So the preview link, when I click on the eyeball, this is also going to be that link that you would share with others. Okay, so somebody is not going to type in this very long link. So you have some other options. Okay, so one of the options that you have is you could click send and you could email it out. If you click on link, you can get a shortened URL. Again, the Google URL shorteners are blocked in some schools. So in some schools, it may not work. I would test that out first. So that is somewhat of a shorter URL. You have the option to click on this button right here, where if you're good with adding embed codes to your school website, you could copy and paste this into your school website, or just copy and paste that link in. So that would be one option. The other is, if I get this link here, this very long one, and I copy that, I could use some links that I have here to create a QR code. Okay, so the link that I have here is for the QuickMark QR code extension. So if you add that onto your Chrome browser, it just adds a little extra bit of functionality so that you can create a QR code. So again, this is the page that has that live link. And for those who don't use QR codes or haven't seen them, it's sort of like a barcode. It's usually a square shape. So I'm going to right click on my live form here and choose, because I already have this extension installed, choose encode current page URL. Okay, so then you see it's going to give me a QR code that can be scanned. So again, I could copy this image, I could paste it into a doc that I'm going to print out, maybe put up as a poster. so that somebody can scan with a QR reader on their phone. Also in here, what I've done is, for those who have Chromebooks or those who use the Chrome browser, there's actually an extension where you can use a QR reader right from your Chrome browser or your Chromebook. So when I launch that, oh, there I am. I would put my code up to it, and then it would scan the code, and then that would bring me out to that particular form. Okay, so that way no one should ever have to type in this very long address. So what I'm going to do is just fill out a few more options here. Okay. Okay, and click submit. Okay, so now because I changed the settings, I can go in and I can see previous responses. Okay, and I can edit my response because I chose those options in my settings under the gear. So now I'm in the editor view, and you can see I have responses here. I have 2 responses. Okay, I'm just going to take this one more time. So again, click on my eyeball. Okay. Okay. And let's say I'll choose 2 again here and click submit. And pretty much the results will show up instantaneously once somebody takes that particular survey. Okay. So then you can see here the breakdown of that linear scale if I kind of mouse over. Okay. Same thing here if I kind of mouse over my answers. It came out as a pie chart. So some other ways that you can get results, maybe if you wanted to customize some of these charts before you put them in an infographic. So from here, I clicked on the responses tab, and I'm going to click on this little green icon to create my spreadsheet. Okay, so when I click here, what's going to happen is I could choose an existing spreadsheet. In this case, I'm just going to create a new one. And the spreadsheet is going to have the same name as my form, only in parentheses, it's going to have the words responses. So now I'm going to click create. Okay, and then it's going to open that up. And this also lives within my Google Drive. So if I go back to my Google Drive and I click on my recent files here, you can see I have the Google form itself. And I also have my responses in the Google Sheets. Just a couple of other things I didn't show about forms, and then we'll get into the things you can do with charts in a spreadsheet. Okay, so if I wanted to just change the look and feel of my survey, at the top of the page, I'm going to click on the little artistic color palette. Looks like a paint palette. I can either choose a color in particular, or if I want sort of an image background, I can scroll down to this little mountain icon and choose kind of one of their pre-made backgrounds, or I could upload my own photo. Okay, so let's say I wanted this one. Or perhaps travel. Okay. Maybe I'll just choose, let's say this one here. Click select. Okay, and then when I click on the eyeball, you can see now this is how it would look to that outside user. Okay. So now I'm going to look at my Google Sheets. Okay, so in here, I do have some instructions in case you need sort of a reference after the fact of how you can insert charts into your Google Sheets. So I have some links here that you can visit. So this kind of walks you through the this tip sheet of how to draw charts in Google Sheets. Okay, so there are a couple of different ways that you can do that, some different kinds of charts. And so we're going to go through a few of these and then how you can customize those charts. And there are some other tutorials here. Okay, and there's some other links here as well about some of the new features that have come out just within the past year for Google Sheets. And I have some examples as well. So again, so far we've looked at pie charts. Some of the new ones that you can do, I mean, if I wanted to, I could even do something with a map. I can do a tree map like this. Candlestick charts. So you can see there are some interesting different kinds of charts that you can choose from. So this goes through, for example, scatter charts, timelines. And if you wanted to use these templates, you could always click on Use Template and create that for yourself within Google Sheets. So it kind of gives you on the side here how you would need to format your data. Okay, so again, if you want an organizational chart, sort of like a family tree even, some different ones that you could use here. I've used the gauge before as students are collecting points. Maybe you've seen that in one of my other webinars. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how you can insert the charts and then also customize those with what you need aesthetically, or the best way to convey your information within your Google Drawings, which are going to be your infographics. Okay, so here I have my survey results, and not too many so far. But now if I wanted to put in a chart, I can go up to Insert, and I can choose Chart. Okay, so now I also have the option from here to insert a chart by this little icon on my toolbar. So either by clicking there, or I can go up to Insert and choose Chart. And then go to Insert Chart. Okay. So that you can see it broke that up into a pie chart here. So some of the options that you have, you could switch rows and columns, which doesn't really work in this case here. This is why a lot of times you want to make sure you select your data first and then click on Insert Chart, a step that I even often forget. Okay, so now if you wanted to change, let's say, some of the colors that go along with this, I could click Customize. So again, under Data, if I didn't want pie chart, they give me some other suggestions. So I could use a bar graph. I kind of like pie chart. You can use, some of these make more sense than others, but you can use any of these different types of charts. I wonder if I tried to do a map, I guess it's not really doing that. I would have to put in exact countries, I believe, for that to work, because it goes by the countries themselves. So if I had said, what country are your family's ancestors from, then I could have done that map option as a geochart. Okay, but here I'm going to choose my pie chart. And if I click Customize, under my chart style, here's where I can choose a background color. So you may have noticed in my examples that I gave of infographics in Google Drawings, I had a different colored background. So what you'd want to do then is make sure you would match this background to whatever you put into your Google Drawings, which we'll look at in just a second. Okay. You can choose different fonts if you would like, and those different fonts will be what will display within your infographic. Okay, I can make that three-dimensional if I want to. Maximize kind of cuts it off a little bit. If I wanted a donut hole in the middle, I could choose that. So depending on the kind of chart that you choose, there are some different options. If I needed to change the title text, I could do that. I can change my color here. So if I didn't want that blue, I could choose purple. Same thing here, Eastern European. I could choose, any different color that I would want to for that. Okay. So some different ways that you can customize. Okay, so now we have a chart within here. And then maybe I will just put in one more chart. Okay. Should put in a couple. I'll do just for this one here. Let's see, maybe I'll just do this one. So I'm going to select this column. And now, as others take the survey, the results are going to show up here. Just like instantaneously they showed up within the form, they're going to show up pretty much instantaneously within here as well. They'll show up with a timestamp and then with the responses. Okay, so again, I'm going to select my column, click Insert Chart. Okay, and then from here, choose the chart that I would like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new Google drawing and then start my infographic from there. Okay, so now creating infographics in Google Drawings. I do have a link here from a Google innovator named Alice Keeler, and she shows some of her strategies that she uses for sort of creating those infographic type shapes. So I'll go through a couple of these. As you can see, there are some built-in shapes that you can use within Google Drawings. And this shows also how you can customize those shapes themselves. Okay, and how she takes smaller shapes, groups them together to make, for example, this blank person icon. Okay, so Alice has some great tips, and I'll show some of those to you right now. Okay, so now to create my infographic, I'm going to start in my Google Drawings. So I'm going to click New. I'm going to choose More, just like I did for the forms. And from here, choose Google Drawings. Okay, so now at the top here, I'm going to put in family, ethnic background, let's see. Okay, so now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put in that background color. So again, I chose kind of that orange as the background. And the way I'm going to do that is by clicking on my shape tool, and I'm just going to choose a rectangle. Again, I could choose rounded rectangle if I wanted it to have the rounded corners. I have that option as well. But actually, before I do that, I have to think about how I would like to display this infographic. So if I know that I'm going to print this out on a regular size paper, I might want to set that up before I actually put my graphics in. So what I'm going to do is go to my File menu, and I'm going to scroll down to Page Setup. Okay. So now I'm going to scroll down to Custom, and you can see that the custom is 10 inches by 7.5. That'd be good if you're printing landscape. If you're printing portrait, you could just flip those. I could do 7.5 by 10 inches. Or you could switch that to centimeters if you're using that. And click OK. Okay. And just with any, as with any kind of Google resource, just about, the changes will save automatically to your Google Drive. So again, now if I go back to my drive in my recent resources, I can see there's my drawing. Okay, so now I'm going to draw my rectangle. Let me just move this up a little bit here. So choose my shapes and, oops, let me undo that. Choose my shapes and choose rectangle. And so now I'm going to drag a rectangle over that part here. So the default color is going to be that blue. If I want to change it, I have to make sure that it's selected. So click in the middle of it and click the paint can. And I'm going to change that fill color. So I'm going to change it to that same color that I used for my charts here. So it kind of looks like it blends in. Okay, so now I can also add, if I want to, I'm going to click off of it, add some text through a text box, and drag to make a text box. And I'll say ethnic backgrounds of our families. Okay, now if I select that text box, I might want to center that, perhaps make the text bigger. I'll choose 24. I can make that bold, let's say. Okay, so now from here, if I wanted to put in the chart that I created in my sheets, I would go to Insert, Chart, and choose From Sheets. So then it's going to search any spreadsheets that I have that actually have charts in them. So I'm going to click on my family's background and click here and link to the spreadsheet. Now, when I keep this option selected, what it does is it gives me that dynamic data. So when more survey results come in, then I have the option to update, click that update button to show the changes within my infographic. And so I'm going to click import. Okay. Now, if I needed to make that smaller, I certainly could. Now, also what I may need to do here is I could make this a little bit smaller text, maybe I would need to do. So if you need to edit your chart after the fact, click on the chart, and then you'll see 3 dots that are in that upper right corner, and click Edit Chart. Okay, and so now under Customize, I'm going to go to Chart Title. Okay, and maybe I just want to choose, let's say, a smaller font size here. We'll see how that looks. So now I have my Update button that shows up. Okay. And actually, I might change that a little bit, take out the words count of, actually. Okay, and then I'll see update again and click here. Okay. And so, you know, I can continually customize that. Maybe I'll center the text. So on the charts themselves, I'm actually making the changes within my sheets. And then back from my Google Drawings, I'll see update. And I can put that in. Okay. And I'll just put my other chart in. Then maybe just draw a few other images into here and show you the options that you have. Okay, so I'm going to go to Insert, Chart. Now I could create them from scratch here, but since this is based on survey data, I'll go to Insert, Chart, From Sheets. Okay, and so now in here, choose my same one, click Select. Click on my histogram, click Import. Okay. And I can always make that a little bit smaller if I need to. Okay, So now I can say that on the side here, I'll just put it in a text box. Could be the clearest way. I'll say 1 equals by all. 5 equals very much. Okay, and of course I could highlight that text, click on the A. Let's say if I wanted to change my text color, make that bold, stretch my text box if I need to. Actually, maybe I'll move that down to here. I'll move that over a little. Okay. So it's looking okay so far. Maybe I want to put some other images into there. Again, if I click on shapes, I have basic shapes that I could combine or put in. I have some arrows. I have some call outs. I kind of think one of these call outs actually looks like a flag. So I'm going to click on that one and I'm going to click and drag. So let's say flag from a country. And I could choose a color from here, or I could choose a gradient, let's say. Okay, maybe showing sort of a flag icon there. And maybe I wanted to bring in a picture. I mean, certainly you have the option as well to bring in actual images or clip art. So the way that you would do that is if you go to Insert and choose Image, you have these options. You can either upload one that you already have on your computer. You can search the web. You can grab one from your Google Drive or your Google Photos, or you can bring it in by a URL. Okay, so if I click on Search from the web, I have some options here. Right, search for flags of the world, let's say. I could always bring in an image like this. Okay, so I'm going to click on the image. And if I double click, it's going to bring that in. And I can always, let's say, resize that a little if I want to. I could even do something cool and make this kind of the background of my infographic if I so choose. Okay, it might be kind of neat to do. Just going to pull this over a little bit here. Okay. So some other resources that you have for pictures, especially sometimes people are concerned with if it's going out to a wider audience, are these copyright friendly? So again, a resource that's great for finding copyright friendly images is Pixabay. So pixabay.com, anything that you find here is going to be public domain. So let's say from here, I search for flag. Okay. I don't know if I want that one. Not. Let's see. So these are just suggested images at the top. These are Shutterstock. Those are their advertisements. That's how they keep their things free. So if I wanted to get a link here, let's say, or maybe click on this beach. Oh, I kind of like this one. Okay, so I'm going to click on it. Okay, then you see that it's a free download. So I could download that image. I could share that with others if I want to. Okay, so now if I download that image, I'm just going to download a small size and click download. And there's a million ways you can get this in, but that would be one way. I'm just going to take this one out. I can do insert image and then upload from computer. Okay, and that's going to be in my downloads here. Okay, and then I can still resize that here. Okay. Another option, let me go back to my slides here. If you search Google Images, if you are looking for things that may just be clip art, you can go to Google Images, and also you have the option to filter for images that are labeled for that non-commercial reuse. So for things that would be copyright friendly. And this is where then, once you filter there, you could do a save image as, and then go through the same process of putting that image into your Google Drawings. Okay. And then Open Clip Art is another one that you can choose. So I do have some directions here as well for that openclipart.org. So again, this would be one where you could choose copy link address. So that's one strategy we haven't really looked at yet. Let's say I search for flag here. So let's say, let's see if I can find one here. That might be good. They're all great. Now I'm just going to choose my country's flags here. Okay. Now you don't want to choose this link on the side. That's sort of an advertisement. Here I have all of my tags. But what I want to do is, where it says PNG, I'm just going to right click on here and choose copy link address. Okay, so when I do that, what's going to happen is I have that link, direct link, copied to my clipboard. So now when I go back to my Google Drawing and I do insert image, I can choose, instead of upload from my computer or search web, I'm going to choose by URL. Okay, and now I'm just going to right click, I'm going to paste that in here, and then it's going to pop up, and if yes, that's the one I want, I'm going to click insert. Okay, and so then again, I can sort of resize that. Let's say if I wanted to bring it down here. And any of the elements on here, really, if I wanted to, I could resize and move around. Sometimes something might get in front that you really want to move to the back. In that case, you may have to select it, and then you could click at the top where it says arrange and go to order, and you can choose to bring something to the front or back. So I can send that backward. I may have to actually do that a few times depending. Okay. And let me just resize this one a little bit here. Okay. And so then again, I could put in some additional graphics if I wanted to here. So again, I could combine some. I'll just put in a smiley face here for fun. Choose, let's say, a different color. Okay. So here I have my infographic. So again, I could share this the same way I would with any Google Doc. I could get a shareable link. By default, it's when you get the shareable link, it's anyone within your organization. But I can certainly click more, and then I can choose anyone with the link. Then copy this link, share that whoever I would like to. You can see that I have the option to go to File, and I can print that out. So again, if I print this, that's going to print on that 8.5 by 11 page and show that whole page. Okay. The other option, I could publish it to the web by going to File, Publish to Web. Okay. And then when I publish it and I click OK, I can either get a link to share, or this is where then I can get an embed code if you wanted to work with your website embed code app And I could show that right on my website. Okay, so that is how you can create some infographics, again, from that authentic research using Google Forms, Sheets, and Google Drawings. Okay, so next things next, first things first. If you're accessing the course from our online course platform, or elsewhere for those who are accessing in a different way, I'm going to click on from my left-hand menu, probably where you are right now, using Google Forms, Sheets, and Drawings to create infographics. And in order to receive a certificate, you will need to click on the webinar quiz. Okay. And so if you click there, you will need to put in a secret code, which is data graphics. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little. Hopefully you can see it on here. Okay, so the code for that is data graphics. And then once you put that in, you'll be able to fill in the rest of the survey. So make sure you put in your email address, answer the questions that are here, and click submit. And then fairly soon, you should then get a response saying that you are successful, or that you would need to take that again. Okay, and if you're watching this webinar after the fact, and you have questions that you'd like to ask, you can click on the link that says questions about infographics in Google. You can always email me questions as well. And if you wanted access to the presentation, again, on the links that have the additional resources you can use, the tip sheets that you might want to look at, that link to the presentation file is in here as well. So let me just check once more here for questions in the live session. Doesn't look like we had any other questions there. So I thank you very much. And I hope you will consider trying this out. And I look forward to seeing you again in another webinar. If not this year, then hopefully next school year. So have a good night, and hopefully I will see you again soon. Thank you.